So going back to the full iRAP, if you are lucky enough to be able to do an iRAP survey across your whole network, like they have done on the Strategic Road Network in England and on Strategic Roads in Wales, this means that we can use the results for performance management, so tracking different performance metrics over time. For example, for national highways in RIS1, they had a target for 90% of travel to be on 3-star above roads by 2020. They're still using iRAP as a performance metric to this date. And it starts to give you a picture of how things are progressing and how you're performing across the whole network. We can also use the data for prioritisation. So where we've got star ratings, what we typically do is look at where we've got low star ratings. So there's probably something you can do about the road to improve it, or the way that it's operated, speeds and so on. And also looking at historical collision density. So this is where we know there's a lot of death and serious injury to prevent, and there's probably something we can do about the road indicated through the low star ratings. The two together are quite a powerful combination to use for prioritisation. We can also then look at mass action modelling. So we can run scenarios at the network level that consider, for example, well, if I introduced a new speed limit for all of my rural single carriage road roads, say I went for 40 or 50, you can then start to have a look at the impact on star ratings, but also the potential impact on death and serious injuries across the whole network. You could also have a look at where you've got ramped end terminals to your vehicle restraint systems, and what would happen if you were able to replace all of them. Or you could look at what would happen if you could make all of your surface condition adequate, or maybe putting in raised profile markings where you don't have them across the network. So there's lots of things you can do at that mass action level, which you can then procure in a really efficient or relatively efficient manner. We also have some new lead safety indicators, which are quite exciting. So on this screen, you can see our decimal star ratings. So here, instead of just talking about 1 to 5, we're talking about a 3.1, which means it's a low 3. It's just a little bit more informative than just 3-star, for example. And it also gives us an idea beyond just traversing that 3-star boundary where we are in terms of performance. We also have the compliance gap. So this is the flow weighted average difference between the vehicle speeds and the posted speed limits. That's all good. Shows you probably where you might want to think about enforcement of your speeds. But more importantly is this safety gap. This safety gap, to me, gets at the heart of the safe system. It's the difference between how fast people are going and how fast you'd have to go to achieve 3, 4 or 5 stars. You can set your level of performance. So it gives you that indication of how fast people are going versus how fast it would be safe for them to go. Now, doesn't necessarily mean that you need to then immediately bring speeds down. You can engineer up and make it safer for them to move at higher speeds, if you like. So you can bring speeds down, engineer up, and actually often meet in the middle by doing a little bit of both. And this is our very safe system aligned safety performance metric. And I'm pleased to say that Jersey have adopted this for their most recent casualty reduction plan. And we have these on maps as well. So this is a compliance map. Where it's red, it's not so good. Where it's green, it's brilliant. You can see where you might want to focus in on some of the enforcement activities along this route, for example, useful information for the police. We also then have our safety gap. So where it's dark red, that means that there's a big gap between how fast people are going and how fast it would be safe for them to go. Where it's green, we're in sort of good territory because vehicle speeds are moving at an appropriate speed for the kind of layout and character of the road. So this is a really important way of prioritising along the route as well as across the network. So more commonly, we apply iRAP at individual locations and routes. We've trialled individual locations as part of the RSIP project, the Road Collision Investigation Project that the RAC Foundation ran. So where there was a fatal collision, we'd then have a look at the iRAP star ratings. We also think they're really useful for development planning, as I've mentioned earlier. But much more commonly, we use iRAP for route review. And this has been the underpinning of the Safer Roads Fund investment of nearly 200 million across nearly 100 routes now. And the outcome, or the expected outcome, I should say, of that Safer Roads Fund programme can be seen in the infographic. So here, what we're doing is we're taking off at the point where we've got our Safer Roads investment plan and then moving on to this user-defined investment plan, which is where you get to apply your local knowledge, expertise, and knowing what you've got space for and what's in standards and what's acceptable locally, and tailoring that investment plan. We're really grateful to National Highways because they've provided a little bit of funding for this tool, which has transformed it really recently into something that is really closely aligned to the SAFE system. So before that particular project, we had a route review tool where you could have a look at the engineering treatments along the route, but actually all the other steps were having to be done in spreadsheets outside of the tool, which was a little bit manual and a little bit difficult. But now what we've got is the whole process is in the route review tool, which is fantastic. So we built what we call the wizard in the route review tool, which takes us through these 5 steps. We've got refining the baselines. So that's just making sure that all of the local knowledge and intelligence on the route is definitely captured within that baseline scenario where we've got our coding, but sometimes we like to have a bit of local verification. So, for example, are those lighting columns actually passively safe ones? Because if so, we can record those as being okay. Or it might be that we bring in local knowledge about pedestrian, walking and cycling levels along the route or across the route. You might know about trip attractors and schools and so on that we can't see from the video imagery when we code. So it's a really important step is refining that baseline. You might want to do like a few surveys of walking and cycling or whatever along the route, or just use your local knowledge. What we then do is re-baseline. This is reserved for people who have done a network-wide survey, and it's been a few years since that survey was done. So it's all about bringing the survey up to date, if you like. So incorporating any new developments, changes to speed limits, route safety schemes that might have already been put in place. So anything that's changed on the network, we can then capture in a new step, if you like, in the process, bringing it right up to date for our baseline. We then have our active travel baseline, which is where we try to estimate what level of active travel should we really expect to achieve on that route. Who should be there rather than who is there. So it allows us then to model the expected fate and serious injuries of who should be there rather than who's historically been there. We then have our speed management step, which is our speed management mitigations, and then our engineering treatment mitigations as well in the last step. So this wizard allows us to progress through those steps in the route review tool. Each step, what we get out of it are estimates of fatal and serious injuries, star rating maps and tables, speed and fatal and serious injury profiles, recommended countermeasures and decimal star ratings. And these are really useful things for business cases. So when you're starting to develop your business case and try to explain what you've done and why, having some of this intelligence in those business cases can really help to illustrate why it's a good idea and to give you that input information into transport appraisal to allow you to progress forward with that. The first 3 steps are done in a really simple interface in the route review tool. So the route review tool can look a bit like this. The benefit of the route review tool is that you can arrange all the windows just as you like them. So a bit like having papers on a desk, you can sort of make it how you like to look at the world. What we've got on in the background here is our estimate of fatal and serious injuries along the route. We've got our coding attributes that we've brought up here. So this is the same kind of coding interface that the coding teams use. I've got a picture of the road from Google Street View. Have to always check that's a recent one, but they normally are on the sorts of roads that we look at. And we've got our fatal and serious injury estimate for vehicle occupants here, but we can toggle through the different users if we want to. And what we do basically is at an individual location, so you can see where you are on the route. This is the number of pedestrian peak hour movements along the road on the driver's side that we're expecting, or we think there is present, and then this is the across the road, and this is on the passenger side. So in the refining the baseline stage, all you're doing is just updating that by clicking on the correct tab, saving changes and moving forward to the next 100 meters. Then what you do when you've made all the changes that you need to make, you hit process, it sends it through to VIDA, the iRAP system tools, and then that then returns the results back into the route view tool and updates everything. Same is true for rebaselining and where we want to change the active travel levels on the route as well. So it's a really simple interface to use, and you know where you are, which is great, because when we used to use spreadsheets, nobody really knew where they were along the route, or it was incredibly difficult to know where you were on the route, really. But every time you move forwards, you can see where you are. It gives you an indication of what's been coded, and you can then update those codings if you want to. Then it gets a bit more interesting because, yes, and you reprocess in the wizard after each step, as I said earlier. So it's really simple, just make sure you're in the right tab and then process, and it sends it all back and returns it all through to the route review tool. What we then ask is, once we've got our final baseline established, is that everybody takes a bit of a step back and thinks. It's really tempting to just dive on in there and go and start testing countermeasures, but what's really important is to understand what kind of approach might be appropriate for the route. And to do this, we've got a few other things up here. So we've got our countermeasures that have been triggered by the model or put into the Safe Roads Investment Plan. So the yellow ones are the ones that have been triggered, blue ones ended up in the Safe Roads Investment Plan. We've got our fatal and serious injury estimates, which again, you can toggle through and get to the different user groups that you might be wanting to concentrate on. And then you've also got this thing called the speed profile. Now, the speed profile presents to you the 85th percentile speed in blue, the mean speed in a sort of pinky colour, and then underneath there you can see in orange the speed limit. So you can immediately see there's a bit of non-compliance on the route, so that might give you a bit of an idea about what you might do there. You can also see that these lines don't always fall within the 3, 4 and 5-star speeds for the route, which means there's a safety gap. So wherever you've got clear space between these blue and pink lines and the background colours, that means you've got a safety gap that you might need to plug, either by engineering and providing better facilities or by perhaps moderating those speeds down. So this gives you a bit of an overview about the safety performance of the route, really, and where to focus on and what sort of thing you might want to do. So everyone gets together and they have a meeting where we go through the route and have a bit of a think, a bit of a pause before we start modelling anything. When we are ready to model, we start with speed management. The reason for that is that some road safety engineering treatments won't be necessary if you can get speeds down a bit. Or they'll be more or less effective. So we get our speed management scenario sorted first. What we've got in here are some new speed management countermeasures that aren't in the Safer Roads Investment Plan for iRAP. We've got 22 of them. They cover all sorts of things from average speed cameras to gateway treatments to changes in speed limits to optical bars, all sorts of different things that you might be able to think about. And we've done a pretty extensive literature review that's underpinned that and their influence on vehicle speeds. What we're trying to move from is making our decisions about speed limits based on just operating speeds, which is the sort of normal practice really at the moment. So we typically would not allow a speed limit to be set if it weren't very well aligned with the 85th percentile speeds. You could then say that what you want is to make your speed limit the safe speed, but actually that's quite complicated because safe speeds are quite low, and we need to really think about that. So what we've proposed is to first of all think about the function of the road. What's the road for? Who's it there to support? What kind of function does it have? Is it for exchange? Is it for place function? What's it doing? What's the purpose of the road? And set a functional speed to be that's ideal for that road accordingly. That then becomes the speed limit. And then the job of the road safety engineer is to make sure that those speeds are as safe and as credible as they possibly can be. So we've got functionality in the route review tool to set a functional hierarchy. So here's some ideas of what our roads might be called. It's completely flexible. You can set whatever terminology that you desire locally. And we just then say from here to here, this road is a distributor urban, zup, and then save it, and it records what kind of road it is. And if you've predefined your functional speed, it will draw another line on this lovely profile, which is the purple line. So this shows you the functional speed for the route is completely made up, this one. But it then tells you that what you want is to manage speeds so that they match the functional speed, because that's what the purpose of the road is demanding. And then if there's some clear space between those background colours and the purple line, then you've got to engineer up. So it gives you a really good idea about the sorts of things that you might do. Those 22 new speed management countermeasures can be selected and applied. You just quite literally click along on these cells and say, I want to turn it on here, and turn it on here, hit save, hit process, and it goes back through the model and comes back again, and it will give you an update to all of the profiles and all of the number of fatal and serious injuries we're expecting, the star ratings, and so on and so on and so on. So it gives you everything that you could possibly need for your business case for doing a speed management intervention along that route. What then happens is you move on to your engineering treatments. This is the bit that everyone's chomping at the bit to do, because this is the stuff we can build to make things better. You can see what the modelers consider to be important through the blue and yellow cells. And then all you do is you say, yep, I'll do a bit of that. Oh, no, I can't do that one, so I'll leave that one as it is. I'll do this one here, and it turns them green. And then you then hit save and process, and it'll throw it all back through and bring it forwards again. And as I say, what you get out is fodder for your business case ultimately. And it's been what's been really effective for Safer Roads Fund and decision makers for that particular programme. Some road authorities have had some success just applying the Safe Roads Fund process that I've just described to another route. And because their decision makers now understand what the iRAP graphs and charts and metrics mean, they've then been able to secure significant levels of funding for other routes as well, which is great. And just a final note on iRAP and development planning. So here, the environmental assessment of traffic and movement guidelines that are issued by IEMA talk now about the safe system and doing iRAP or similar. Some planning inspectors are already starting to request iRAP. So if you interface with development planning colleagues or have any interest in that, do let me know. You can do different things, different proportionate things for development planning. If you've just got a very, very small development, then you might just use the demonstrator to be able to show, well, here's the baseline and here's the impact of the development and here's what we're going to do to mitigate it. But actually for those larger schemes, it's written into the guidance that you should be doing the full iRAP survey to really understand impact. I mentioned some other iRAP tools briefly in passing. Do go and have a look at those if you're interested. We've got CycleRAP, Star Rating for Schools, the YEA, which is the Youth Engagement app, which is like a map where you can pin your feelings and views about a particular route. We're starting to see if we can look at that with neurodivergent young people to help understand their routes to their schools and places of learning. And then I mentioned Star Rating for Designs, which is the web app that supports coding from design drawings. I hope that's been a useful whistle-stop tour of iRAP as an introduction. If you have any questions at all, we'd always be delighted to take them. I don't think I've got my contact details on here, but I think most of you will be able to find us on our website, or it's susie.charman@roadsafetyfoundation.org. Really pleased to hear from you if you have anything further that you would like to explore with us. I hope you have a good day.